Statista reports that the average NFL career spans only 3.3 years. Meanwhile, RBC Wealth Management tells us that the average retirement age for an NFL player stands currently at 27.6 years, leaving more than a third of their life at their oyster for them to redefine what makes them tick and their sense of fulfillment for the rest of their days. Sean Conley is a former NFL kicker who played for the Detroit Lions, Indianapolis Colts, and the New York Jets throughout the course of his career. However, after suffering some career-ending injuries as a result of overtraining, he embraced yoga and its mindfulness principles as a new way of life and as his next chapter in his professional journey. Now, as a yoga teacher himself, he owns Amazing Yoga in Pittsburgh. He's also the author of the new book, The Point After: How One Resilient Kicker Learned that there was more to life than the NFL. Conley joined me this week to discuss his NFL journey and his life after football. I'm Kevin McShane. Let's have this conversation. I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, and I'm excited to learn all about your life in football and afterwards. Great to see you this afternoon, and thank you so very much for being here.
Yeah, perfect. Let's do it.
So, Sean, I'm curious to start our conversation by asking you to sort of reflect on your NFL career and how it impacted the person you are today.
Yeah, that's a great question. So my NFL career was, I didn't have like a Tom Brady type of career for sure. So I was someone that was just like more typical. I had like a lot of ups and downs when I played. I was cut a lot. Like I'd be with a team for a few months, then I'd be released, and then I'd be with another team. And so for me, my career was there was a lot of highs, but a lot of lows. So it was like a big struggle. So I think how that like impacted me is, it got to a certain point where my body was in pretty bad shape from training all those years. And, I fought with that whole idea, like, hey, never give up. You should keep fighting. You should, never give up on your dreams. But I think what I realized at a certain point is, if something's not working out, because near the end of my career, my body was in such bad shape that, if I kept playing, I would have had like permanent damage to my body, but also it just started to affect, the people around me, because I was so obsessed with having like this long career in the NFL. So like when it finished for me, it was something that I struggled with, but letting go was probably the best thing that I could do. So I think I just realized, sometimes in life it's just, it's okay to walk away when, if you you gave it your all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that for you, one of the journey to that discovery process, that you discovered yoga as well, and I know that it's had a big impact on your life. So I'm wondering if you could tell me about it.
Yeah, so what really brought me into yoga, well, first and foremost, was my wife Karen. So when I was playing the NFL, she was into teaching yoga and teaching meditation, but this was back in the 90s when football players, NFL football players wouldn't do anything like yoga or meditation. So she said, hey, you need to do this. It'll help your body. It'll help your mind. But I didn't buy into it because it just didn't seem like something that, made sense for a football player to do. But what happened to me is, when my career ended, I was in such bad shape physically, but also mentally and emotionally. I had a really hard time. I guess you could say, like, I had like some regret about like my career. Like, if I would have made this decision or this decision, it could have turned out for me differently. But what I discovered with practicing a lot of yoga and practicing meditation, it helped me with both. It helped heal my body from the physical injuries, yet at the same time, it just helped me, that the yoga helped me be more in the present moment versus, where I was before, which was, stuck on, thinking that I was a failure because my NFL career didn't go exactly as I had hoped or had planned.
Yeah, and you transitioned into business after you finished playing. I know that you're a yoga teacher now yourself, and you own amazing yoga in Pittsburgh. So tell me about making the transition from football player to entrepreneur.
Yeah, the reason why I made the transition, I think I discovered that the yoga did so much for me, both physically, emotionally, spiritually, and it just seemed like it made the most sense for me to now give back. And I felt that since I was a very unlikely candidate to get into Pittsburgh or get into yoga, that maybe I could have an impact in teaching, for others in teaching yoga, because I was like an unusual person at the time to get into yoga. I mean, nowadays you have a lot of athletes doing yoga, but when I first started teaching yoga, like around the year, I guess about 20 years ago, guys didn't do yoga, athletes didn't do yoga. So I felt like that was a way that I could give back and help athletes as well to start to do yoga at an early age. That way they had a tool or a practice that they could do that could help them with their bodies, but also, most importantly, with their minds as well, and their mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. Mental health has become a focus of the NFL more than ever before. So I appreciate you entering that space. And tell me about it. I know you've also written a book called The Extra Point. Proving to yourself there is life after football. So tell me about the book and the message you were hoping to convey through.
Yeah, there's the biggest message I was hoping to convey in the book had to do with identity. One thing that I really struggled with when my career ended was, I when I grew up, I always thought I'd be an NFL football player. Like, so from age 8, all the way till 25 when my career ended, I always thought that's what I would be. So, the biggest message I think was just, life doesn't always go as planned, and that's okay, because, it took me a few years when my career ended. I never had like a backup plan. I never had a plan B. And for me, I always thought I'd be happy being an NFL football player and having a long career. But when that didn't happen, I had to, take some time, introspection, so to speak, to realize, like, hey, there's so much more out there in life. That's the main reason why I wrote the book.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sean, special teams is taking on increased importance in today's football. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on the evolution of special teams and how it's affected football.
Yeah, well, I think one place where it's changed is you see these kickers. So many of them can kick really long field goals, and the reason being is they're training differently now. Like, kickers are spending a lot more time in the weight room. There's a lot of advances in nutrition. And so, it used to be like, if the kicker came out to kick like a 50-yard field goal, you'd be like, oh, like 50-50, he may make it, he may miss it. Now they're expected to make that kick because they're just, they're just stronger. Like, when I played, there just wasn't, there was a lot of strong kickers, but there just wasn't, the knowledge that we have today in terms of like training and also even just, not overtraining. When I played, this isn't too long ago, like 20 years ago, a lot of players overtrain, but now, they're wising up to, like, rest and recovery. So I think that's why you're seeing a lot of kickers and punters who are much stronger than they used to be.
Yeah, and I'm curious to also ask you about moving the extra point back to try try and create more drama, buddy. What do you think about that?
Well, you hit the nail on the head with more drama. I'm very glad that I didn't play in the NFL when they made the extra point, the 30-yard line, because the extra point when it was at the 10, it was a 20-yard kick. You really have to screw it up to miss that. Like you can miss kick a 20-yard extra point and it can still find its way through the goalpost. But once you go back to the 30, you don't have to be perfect, but now there's a chance. And I think what that does to a lot of kickers, and I think that's why there's more turnover with kickers these days, is because they don't get any automatic kicks anymore. The extra point used to be automatic. Say the kicker missed a 40-yard field goal before that, and now he's kicking the 20-yard extra point. He can get his confidence back, but now he has to go kick a 30-yard extra point, which now isn't a gimme. So yeah, it definitely adds drama to it, where the kickers, every single kick now is a potential miss versus that extra point, which was always something they could count on to make.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sean, I know that you played for the Jets, the Colts, said you also spent some time with the Lions. So I'm wondering if you can reflect on for me some of your favorite memories of Detroit.
Yeah, that was, of all my stops, that was my favorite for a couple of reasons. Number one, that was the team I was with the longest. I just got very lucky with a lot of personal interactions I had with Detroit. When I was with the Detroit Lions, we played at the Pontiac Silverdome, which is no longer. But Barry Sanders was on the team, and I still don't know to this day how this happened, but it was the first or second practice. And he just came up to me before practice and asked me if I wanted to play catch. So it ended up being like a tradition. Like before practice every day, I would play catch with Barry Sanders, and he was always just really good for advice. He was maybe in his late 20s at that time, but he was just really wise. And I remember he told me, that there's more to life than the NFL, which actually ended up being like the subtitle for my book. But he was someone who he loved the game of football, but I think he also recognized that there was so much more beyond the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sean, I always lived my life through a model called always active. I've kind of coined that term because I was born with what's called spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy. Simply means that I don't have enough oxygen to walk normally. So I'm curious about your thoughts on making sure that kids always remain active, and the theory for individuals with disabilities to always remain moving and active as well.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the nice thing about yoga is there's so many different styles and there's so many different ways you can teach it. And there's tons of studies now out there with yoga for all different health conditions, and what they're able to do with yoga is they're able to teach it in a therapeutic way. And that's a nice thing. Like, the saying goes, what is it? If you don't use it, you lose it. And I think that's what's really nice about yoga is that it can help with just mobility and moving. My mom, who's approaching 80 now, like I've done some yoga and meditation with her where she can just sit and just move her arms a little bit, move her legs a little bit, and then I can do like a little meditation with her. And so she just gets the physical benefits and for what she can do, but also she also just gets that meditation. So I think it's just really good for kids to do any sort of yoga or meditation, help them both physically and just help them to learn how to breathe.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked a little bit earlier about the importance of mental health. And since you're into yoga, I'm curious to ask you about the number of athletes who are using it now as a form of their mental health. And some have even said that it's elongated their careers. So players are certainly using yoga as a part of their training regimen now. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just a guess from talking to other athletes about what's happening now. My guess is about maybe 25% of athletes now are using yoga and meditation or something similar like Tai Chi for their mental health. When it first came in, like I guess it was probably the mid '90s that the Chicago Bulls started doing meditation. But at the time, I think they're using it more, just to help them focus, to help their performance. But now, what most athletes are using yoga and meditation for is not just for their performance, but also to help them with their mental health. And luckily, now mental health is something that's finally being talked about in the athletic world. I mean, it wasn't too long ago, maybe even 5-6 years ago, it was something that wasn't talked about. Like, when I played, if you brought up any sort of mental health issue or challenge you had with a coach, it was looked at as a weakness. So you just didn't bring it up. But luckily now, I think the teams are understanding that this is something that they need to help their players with.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sean, as you know, the average NFL career lasts only a little over 3 years. So I'm curious if you had a platform to talk to current players about making sure that they have a full plan for life after football. What would you tell them?
Yeah, it would be to do something, while you're playing. I've spent some time with like the University of Pittsburgh football team and the basketball team, and when I've worked with them to do yoga and meditation, I let them know, like, hey, this can help your game now, but it's really nice to have some tools afterwards. And I think what happens to a lot of athletes, and I was one myself, I never thought that my career would end. I couldn't see that far, and I always thought that I'm going to have this long career, and then maybe after my long career, then I can do something else in the athletic world. But it's just not that simple. And I think that's what happens to a lot of athletes is once that career is over, they may need some help with their mental health. And so I think the earlier they can get in, they can bring some sort of practice that can help them with it while they're playing, whether it's yoga, meditation, or whatever, then that can help prepare them for, what's to come later.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you also host a podcast called The Happy Athlete Show. I'm wondering if you can tell me all about the podcast and what it's all about.
Yeah, that was just something that that I came up with. When our studio was closed recently, it's now reopened. But the idea behind the podcast is I bring on a lot of athletes mostly athletes for the most part, and they share their stories of, let's say, resilience or maybe overcoming challenges that they had in their lives, and in the hope of inspiring anyone who's listening. And then I also put up specific meditations, like meditations for myself, like for anxiety, for perfectionism, for gratitude. So that's what I really like to do as well. So I like to have the guests, but I also like to share some of the meditations that I found that have been effective for myself or for others.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sean, I'm curious to ask you, what are you most grateful for in life? And is there a motto in life that you live by?
I would have to say I'm most grateful for my family and friends. I think my motto is my motto. I guess it also would be the same. It would just be grateful every day. That was something that I struggled with. Like during my NFL career, I was always stuck in like, well, what's next? And so that was something that really, once my career ended, I think I was able to look back and think, hey, I got to be grateful for what I have, because it's, life is always changing. So I would say, being grateful and being in the present moment would be my motto.
Yeah, absolutely. And my final question for you this afternoon has to do with your own personal or professional legacy and how you want that to be defined.
I guess it would be, that that I was a kind person. It's something I work on every day. But I just feel like, especially at this point in my life, it's something that I want to be able to give back and to help, and doing that through like the yoga classes, the meditation, the podcast, and everything I do in life, and hopefully I can keep getting better at that.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, Sean, if people want to get connected with you, buddy, what's the best way they can do that?
Sure. Thanks for asking. My website, SeanConley.net, SeanConley.net. And I guess that'd be the best way.
Fantastic. Well, Sean, I have to tell you, I learned a lot about your personal and professional life. I really enjoyed the time we spent together. And I want to Thank you for engaging in conversation with me, boy. It's most appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you as well. Thank you.